they've never gone all the way and done it. And a lot of people thought if there was going to be a year, it would be the year where all the big names like Kentucky, Duke, UVA all pulled out of the NCAA tournament. You thought it would be this year, if any year, but it didn't happen. You're a Zags fan. Why don't you tell us your thoughts on this?
So yeah, it's really difficult because it's a one and done tournament, and we know sometimes the best team doesn't always win. And personally, I'm gonna tell you, I think Baylor was the best team. Baylor did lose 2 games during the season, and they did have a game with Gonzaga that was rescheduled for COVID purposes. But I mean, I think Baylor was the better team that night. Baylor does have 3 NBA ready guards, and they just outplayed the Zags. The Zags were a young team. If you go back and you look at like the rosters and everything like that, even though Gonzaga has been there and this is their second national championship loss, they go deep in the tournament every year. This is a young team. Think about it. They have one senior on this team. Everybody else is either a sophomore or a junior, or is either a freshman, a sophomore, or Ayayi was a redshirt junior. So everybody and Nemhard's a junior. Nemhard was a transfer from another guy. He was a transfer from another program, so he wasn't like he wasn't into the system. Like they integrated him into the system, and he kind of learned the system on the fly, and he did pretty well. But he's not one of those guys that's been in the system for the last 3 years and really, like knows it like the back of his hand. Even though he did integrate it well into his game and did help the Zags. So it was more or less just something when that game was played. I don't know if you ever heard the adage that experience wins in March, and that Baylor team, they played like a bunch of 21 and 22, 23-year-olds against the younger Gonzaga team. It is what it is. I think Gonzaga is going to reload obviously next season. They have this kid Hunter Salas coming in. I think he's the top combo guard in the country coming in. They're the favorite to land Chet Holmgren, number one. He's a 7'1" guard basically because he got guard skills. He can shoot the three, and they're the favorite to land this big North Carolina transfer. Not to mention with what they have coming back, they're gonna have, even though Ballo entered the transfer portal, Baby Shaq, he didn't play that much, but they're gonna have Strother coming back, Harris coming back. Nemhard's probably gonna be back next year. Timmy's probably gonna be back next year. They do lose Suggs, which is a big loss, but Hunter Salas, Suggs held the title of highest rated recruit in Gonzaga history until Salas. Do I think Salas is going to be able to provide the type of production as Suggs? I don't know. Jalen Suggs, if you watch Jalen Suggs play this year, that shot he hit against UCLA in the Final Four, that's a big-time shot made by a
Huge
big
shot. Huge shot.
So he had a big-time block and a huge assist down the stretch that, got them to overtime, and then he hit the shot to beat UCLA in the Final Four. So Suggs is a big-time player. It's going to be really hard to replace something like that. Even though these guys like are all rated high year in and year out, the players like coming out of high school, not one recruiting class, not all recruiting classes are built the same. As you saw with Kentucky and Duke this year, they had 2 of the top recruiting classes in the country, didn't even make the tournament. And I was looking back at interviews done by Jay Billis and Dick Vitale, and they were saying that, the difference between this year's Kentucky and this year's Duke and Duke's and Kentucky's of the past was you look at these guys on Kentucky, they're not Anthony Davis. They're not Karl Towns. They're not Devin Booker. They're not John Wall. Same with Duke. You look at these guys on Duke, even though they were highly rated guys, top 10 guys in their class, they didn't have a Jason Tatum. They didn't have a Julio Okafor, a Tyus Jones. They didn't have a Zion, an RJ. They didn't have guys like that on this team. So it's really hard to predict how good a player is going to be coming out of high school, regardless of how highly rated they are as a recruit. In terms of Gonzaga, though, I think they'll be fine down the stretch. I mean, think about it, dude. Think about with the roster turnover they usually have, because they send guys now religiously every year. They send guys to the NBA. They are able to reload every single year. And based on what they have coming in, what they're projected to have coming in, and what they have returning, they have a lot of guys returning from this team that was in the national championship. They are losing 2 of their top producers in Suggs and Kispert, and they're losing Ayayi, who has the only Gonzaga triple-double in the history of the program, which is hard to believe because this is a program that had John Stockton, and Ayayi has the only triple-double in the history of that program. So that's a feat in itself, and he's going to be an NBA player. 6'5", lanky guard, can do everything, rebound, shoot, assist, do everything for you. The question you asked me was, where Gonzaga goes, like when they're going to win it, dude, it could be next year. We don't know. Remember, University of Virginia, they got knocked out in the first round one year by UMBC and won the whole thing the next year. So it's a very unpredictable program. We don't know who's going to win. And you know what? Losing this game could have motivated like these guys that are coming back. They're going to be motivated. And a lot of people have, they've been like, Suggs for the NBA and everything like that. We have seen guys that were surefire lock lottery picks as freshmen, the Marcus Smarts of the world, guys that were going to get drafted, even Blake Griffin, guys that would have been lottery picks who came back for their sophomore year just because they wanted to prove a point. And Suggs, given the competitor that he is, this loss might not sit well with him. I'm not saying there's a chance he could be back in Spokane next year. I'm not saying he's going to be, but just given the kind of competitor he is, if this loss really didn't sit well with him, you could see him pull a Blake Griffin or a Marcus Smart and be like, nah, I'm coming back for my sophomore year. Let's run it back. So we'll see. I mean, Gonzaga, listen, they could be in it next year. They could win the whole thing next year. We don't know.
Yeah, look, they're always going to be good at recruiting. They're always going to be good at finding talent. They're always going to be good at finding talent in these other schools that are probably more capable of getting these recruits than they are. They're going to be able because they have some of the best scouts in the game, and that's not the question. I think the question is, when is it going to be like is it becoming like a thing like, oh, Gonzaga can't win it? Like is that becoming the narrative? And I think that it has become the narrative after this year, because I think everyone, dude, anyone who had a brain had Gonzaga in their bracket at least making it to the title game this year, because they were the best team left in the bracket. They were dominating their opponents. So I think a lot of people had high expectations for them, and they have them for every year. So once you don't reach like those expectations year in year out, and like it becomes a pattern, I think that's when the narrative changes to one of, okay, Gonzaga is good enough to always be in the conversation but never win the big one. Very similar to, the football analogy, I guess, would be like the Dan Marino Dolphins, or
compare them to Notre Dame football. They're good enough to get there, not good enough to finish the job.
Well, yeah, that's actually true. That's probably a better, that's a better analogy, actually. Yeah, Notre Dame football, whatever you want to call it,
they're good enough. They have multiple pros every year. They're good enough to get to the championship. It's just when they get there, they can't finish the job.
Yep, can't finish the job. So, hey, we'll see. Any last words about Gonzaga or their loss or prospects or anything?
They'll be fine. I think moving forward, they're really good at retooling. They're really good. They always have continuity. Their coach, he's a Hall of Famer, without a doubt. Because remember, dude, for the longest time, the thing was, will they ever make the Final Four? Well, they did it in 2017. And then once they did that, it was, well, will they ever win it? So they've knocked at the door multiple times, dude. They've reached heights that you would not expect a small school in that small conference to reach. And at this point, I think it's just a matter of time before they break through. This year wasn't the year, even though a lot of people are going to say, they blew their opportunity. But hey, listen, like I told you, man, Virginia one year they became the only number one seed to ever lose in the first round to a 16 seed. And they came back the next year and won the whole thing. So anything is possible. They could come back next year. They're bringing in this kid Hunter Salas, who's a 5-star guard. They're the favorite to land Chet Holmgren. They're going to bring back a lot of guys from this year's team. They're going to be more seasoned, and they're going to probably land this kid from North Carolina, this big man from North Carolina, this transfer. And one thing that a lot of people will say about Mark Few, the coach, is he's very good at integrating big men. He's very good with big men. You look at some of the big men he's had, Zach Collins, he's had Sabonis, now he's got Drew Timme, who's probably going to be, if he comes back, Drew Timme is going to be the favorite to win National Player of the Year next year. He's going to be the favorite. So he's very good with big man, and getting this guy, I think it's Walker Kessler is the kid's name. He's going to bring that kid in. He pairs him with Holmgren and Salas with Strother and Dominic Harris coming back, and they're going to have a squad next year. So we'll see.
Thanks for watching this video from Real Take Sports Talk. Remember to like, share, subscribe, hit that notification bell so you get notified whenever a new video is released. Also, remember to check out our live show every single Thursday at 8 p.m. right here on the YouTube channel. And remember, keep it real.